Good evening. We are now all start. We'll continue Siman Kuf Samechet 168. We're towards the end of the Siman. So we're now in a bit more of a trickier part of the bracha of Hamotzi. A bit trickier, and hopefully we'll go through it together. And we'll make it less tricky. Let's just go over a few things we learned last week. We learned that just in the end of the class, we'll go over it fast, and then we'll continue to the next questions. And we have interesting questions here, like the bracha on lachoch, bracha on masabrai. If I eat too many pancakes, what bracha do I say on them? A bracha on waffles, on waflim. Can we ever say hamotzi on waflim? Let's say I eat 2 packets of waflim. So besides going to a doctor afterwards, after Purim, so we had too many waflim in the house. Do we say, can we ever say hamotzi on it? So hopefully these are the questions we'll answer today. And let's just go over some of the topics we learned yesterday or last week. And last week we were talking about the case when we have bread, when we have already bread. If you're looking at Saif Yud, it's Saif Yud, which Kuf Samechet 168, 10. Saif Yud. So we're talking about something that's already bread. And after it's already bread, the question is, what do we do to make it not to be bread? It sounds logic that once something is already bread, it will stay hamotzi unless something serious happens. It makes sense. If it's still not bread, still not hamotzi, so maybe it will stay the level of mezonot. But once it became bread, so it will stay bread. And that has a question which many of us, I guess, have every Shabbat when we eat croutons. If you have croutons in soup, right? What bracha do we say on croutons? Is there a difference between homemade croutons or store-bought croutons? So that's the something which we started discussing last week. And just for the people in Zoom, as I said beforehand, if there's any questions, so I have a problem with the computer and I can't hear you, but you're welcome to open the chat. I'll open the chat. So we said of 3 levels. The first level is just grinding the bread or cutting it to small pieces. But just grind it. Or cut it like breadcrumbs, it's hamotzi. If I eat breadcrumbs, it's hamotzi. Oh, we'll ask a question of schnitzel. We'll hopefully answer the question today on schnitzel. What bracha do we say on schnitzel? That's a great question. It actually belongs a bit more to next week. We'll just answer the bracha on schnitzel. Right? The bracha on schnitzel, most people say it's shehakol. There are a few say it's mezonot or hamotzi. We'll try to understand the logic of it next week. But for now, the bracha on schnitzel is shehakol, and we'll discuss it Bezat Hashem next week. Same with masamil, exactly. Same with masamil. But just grinding it without cooking it is hamotzi. If I take breadcrumbs, eat it like that, for some reason, it's hamotzi. If I soak it in water or stick it with honey or let's say I take breadcrumbs, or there's those chocolate balls that you make from biscuits, biscuitim, and chocolate. Let's say I make those from breadcrumbs. Why? That's what I had at home. Okay, I made them from breadcrumbs. From Pesach, I made them from matzah meal. What bracha do you say on it? So here, since it's not just grinders, it's also soaked with something, it's stuck with something, with chocolate, honey, whatever. So we say hamotzi, we say mezonot, unless there's one out of 2 conditions. If it has a shape of bread, so the bracha will be hamotzi. Or if at least one piece of the bread has a kazait. Okay? So if we say hamotzi, or it has a shape of bread, the pieces have shape, they look like bread, or it has a kazait. Now here, kazait of breadcrumbs. A kazait of one piece of bread has a kazait inside it. If I take a knedlach, for example, that'll be the third example. So the second level is if it's just stacked to each other, not cooked, it will be mezonot unless or it has all the pieces have the shape of bread, or that it is one piece has a kazait. It's cooked, that's it, we go even one level down. And if it's cooked like neidalach, so it will always be mezonot unless at least one piece has a kazait in it. Okay, so here we have quite a few practical questions. What bracha do we say on neidalach? Mezonot. It's grinded, it's cooked, no kazait. Okay, so the bracha is mezonot. What bracha do we say on French toast? We say hamotzi. Why do you say hamotzi? Well, it looks like bread, but it's cooked. Let's say we make French toast. You soak it in milk, egg. It's basically, you can call it maybe cooked. What bracha do we say on it? It has kazait. Hamotzi, right? Hamotzi. It has a kazait. There's at least one piece that has a kazait. So the bracha will be hamotzi. What bracha do we say on matzah? Let's think about it together.
Well, it doesn't look like bread.
Has a kazayat of
But let's think together. So it doesn't look. Maybe it does look like bread. Okay, it does look like bread, but no kazait. Usually, there's no one piece of kazait. You break it very, very much. There's no one piece of kazait. Okay, so maybe the shape of bread is still there. The shape of bread is still there because you can see the pieces. The pieces are still matzah, right? But there's no pieces of kazait there.
Could have big pieces. Yeah.
So usually don't have big pieces. If you have big pieces, so I'm not sure who the chef is. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
I don't even talk.
So let's think. So let's think it together. If it's considered cooked, the blessing might be mezonot. Not considered cooked, the blessing is hamotzi. Okay. So if it's considered cooked, the blessing will be mezonot. If it's not considered cooked, the blessing is hamotzi. Here we have a rule which I think doesn't apply to Matzah Brai, but we have a general rule, not just for here. A general rule that if I fry, okay, on a frying pan with just a bit of oil, okay, just a bit of butter, if it doesn't stick, that's called baking. It's baking. Frying is in deep oil, or cooking is inside liquid. So frying and cooking are very similar, with the idea that they're inside liquid, oil, water, whatever, broth, whatever it will be. That's called cooking. Anything which has just a bit of liquid in it, so it is, it's called baking. So it's baking instead of having it in an oven with the heat coming from the top or from the bottom. Here I'm baking on a pan. So I'm baking on a pan. So maybe Matzah Brai might be hamotzi. Might be hamotzi. Maybe why? The answer is mezonot. We'll get to it in a moment. The final answer is mezonot. But let's go stage by stage. Okay, we say that it doesn't have a kazait, right? It doesn't have a kazait, but the pieces look like matzah. Pieces look like matzah, right? You can see it's matzah. And we said just frying with just a bit of oil is considered baking. If it's not cooked, it's not fried, and if it's not cooked or fried, it doesn't lose the bracha of hamotzi. If you can see it's still bread. Okay, so the bracha should be maybe hamotzi. Some people, before they have matzah brai, they'll take a piece of matzah, say hamotzi on that, and then eat the matzah brai. Some people. Many of the matzah brais we do, you soften the matzah beforehand in boiling water. Right? You pour boiling water on it, and soften it, and milk, and whatever, eggs. And so here, it's true that in the end, the frying pan itself doesn't have a lot of oil or butter inside it, but in the end, this matzah is inside liquid. It's inside liquid. It's soaked liquid. It changes its shape. So since we usually, typically, a good masa bride will be a masa will be soaked in water, and the bracha will be mezonot. Okay, so masa bride is masa soaked in water will be mezonot. If you just take masa and just fry it without anything else, the bracha is hamos. So that is for last week, and we're continuing the topic of this week. Now, warning you ahead of time, this week is a bit trickier. It's the end of the Siman, the end of Kuf Samechet. It's a bit trickier. We'll go through it together. We said that in order to say Hamotzi, we need 4 conditions. 2 of them simple, 1 of them half simple, and the other one, the last one, is a bit less simple. Okay, so the 2 of them needs to be baked, needs to be from the 5 grains. That's relatively simple. Needs to be something that is eaten typically as the main part of the meal. When we talked about cake, we talked about pata and the definition of those things were it's bread. Just since usually people don't make the meal of it, so the bracha will be mezonot. But if I eat a lot of it, so the bracha will be hamotzi. Now here comes the shape of bread. Okay. Also, it also needs to have a to'ar lechem. It looks like bread. Now, just before going into the halachot, if I take an orange, okay, and the orange doesn't look nice, it's not the best. I got it from the scraps. It's not the one that we export to wherever. What bracha do I say on the orange? Right? Okay. I bought an eggplant a few weeks ago because it was an eggplant, and on the bottom it had like another small eggplant growing. It looked like a gun. And since I have a few boys in my house, so I brought it home and I saw the gun and they were playing with it with the gun. Okay. Obviously, the next time I bought an eggplant, that one was eaten already. Next time I bought an eggplant, the small kid, 3 years old, he ran to the bag, took out the eggplant, and tried to see how do we shoot it. It's not, it didn't. He was a bit disappointed, but okay. But okay, so it didn't look like a typical eggplant. What bracha do we say on it? Adama. What do we care how it looks like? Yeah, what do we care how it looks like? Why on bread do we have to have a to'ar lechem, the name of bread? What do we care how it looks like? Well, are we racist here against bread? Hey, what's going on? So what do you say?
Lechem apanim.
Well, first why does bread get a special bracha? It's made out of wheat. Why don't we say mezonot on bread? Yeah, why don't we say so to answer the first question, it's the second question. The whole reason bread has a special bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz is because Chazal realized, or they saw that bread is something important. It's the main part of the meal, and it looks nice. We eat not just from our mouth, we eat also from our eyes, right? And it's the main part of the meal, so it really satisfies us, and it has all the nutrients and other things we need, and whatever. Okay, that's true. But also, you need to feel that it's the main part of the meal. It needs to look like bread. If it doesn't look like bread, and we'll give very soon a few examples, so the bracha will be. Now, there's a difference between the definition of looking like bread, the 4th criteria, and the 3rd criteria. The 3rd criteria of pata b'kisnin, cake, cookies, that is bread. It's basically bread. It's basically bread. But usually we don't eat it as the main part of the meal. Therefore, the bracha is mezonot. If I eat a lot of it, the bracha will be hamotzi. 4th criteria also is a bit trickier, because usually it doesn't matter how much I eat. Usually it will always be mezonot. It will always be mezonot. And we'll read the halacha, we'll learn the halacha, and then we'll give examples. And I'm sure as soon as we give examples, we'll feel that we understand it.
I think you covered it last week, but these days when people are on a diet and they have like 1 slice of bread, but the main meal is something else, but we still say hamotzi.
We still say hamotzi, even 1 piece of bread, right? It's true. Because even today, bread is the main part of the meal. keeping to the end of the siman. If we have time, I'll go back afterwards to sufganiyot. Okay, what bracha do we say on sufganiyot? That's if we have time. I'm skipping it. Also sufganiyot, we have a many interesting questions here today. And also bagels we mentioned also last week, but I'm skipping to Seif Tetvav to Seif 15. Okay, so I'm in Kuf Samechet, Seif Tetvav. So I'll read the Shulchan Aruch and then we'll translate it. Truknin, some kind of bread called truknin. That the Shulchan Aruch tells us you dig a hole inside the ashes, inside the coals, and you pour inside it water and flour, and it's baked inside it. You say it mizanot, and it's true, it's baked on the ashes. Maybe the Bedouins, maybe that's how they make bread. But usually we don't eat it as the main part of the meal. Usually, therefore the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'im kavasu dato alav." I made it the main part of the meal. The bracha will be hamotzi, and obviously bekat hamazon. And here it comes to the interesting part. Aval tarita. What's tarita? You take water and flour, ingredients of bread. The difference is here we have a lot of water, so it's very liquidy, very liquidy. And I pour it on the stove or whatever it is, and it spreads out and baked. Here you can see again that the definition of baked isn't necessarily inside the oven, but also bake on a frying pan. So Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein alav torat lechem lal." It doesn't have in it at all the name of bread, the Torah of bread. It's not bread. It's some kind of very thin pancakes or blinches. ואין מברכים עליו אלא בוראים מזונות וברכה אחת מהן שלוש. And the bracha we say on it is only mezonot and על המחיה when we finish. And it says, ואפילו קבע סעודתו עליו, even if that is what I eat. So let's say I made blinches. Have you ever made blinches? You eaten them. So the way we make blinches is we take I make it very simple without milk, fat, just simple. We can't call it dough, but a mixture of this. Let's say I take just flour and water. It's a very liquid mixture. We pour it on the frying pan, and then it spreads out and it becomes very thin. It bakes or rises very, very fast. And let's say I ate 20 of those. Why do I eat 20 of those? I'm very hungry, right? I'm a very hungry rabbi. I ate 20 of those, 30 of those. What bracha do I say? Mezonot. So here we say, we always say mezonot. As the Shulchan Aruch says, this thing doesn't even look like bread. It's so thin. It doesn't even look like bread. So because it's very, very thin. Let's say I ate many waffles. How do we make waffles? The same idea. Yeah, it's a very, very watery mixture. And it's spread out very, very thin. And if I eat 2 packets of them, so the bracha will always be mezonot. It will never be hamotzi. So here we have the 4th criteria. And the 4th criteria. And the 4th criteria is it needs to look like bread. And when something is so thin that will never look like bread, the bracha will always be mezonot.
Say that if you eat enough mezonot, that's the main part of your meal.
So that's on the 3rd criteria. That's
okay.
So we have 4 criteria, right? The 1st criteria we said it needs to be made out of the 5 grains. That's simple. It needs to be baked. That's more or less simple. It needs to look like, jumping to the 4th criteria, it needs to look like bread. If it's so thin, and we'll give soon more examples, if it's so thin, it doesn't look like bread, it will never be bread. Never be bread. The 3rd criteria, now I'm going back to what we learned. If it's baked, it's thick, it looks like bread, it's just a yeast dough, it's a yeast cake. So if you look at that, if you wouldn't know that it has inside the chocolate filling, you would think, that's a challah. That's such a nice challah. It's baked, it looks like it's nice, it rises, it's baked in an oven, not in the sun. We'll get to an example of it in a moment. So that looks like bread. The only problem with it is that typically people don't eat it as the main part of the meal. That's why the bracha will be mezonot unless I eat a lot of it. Yeah, unless I make it the main part of the meal. Because it's bread, it's just people refer to it as desserts. Okay, but that's more of a subjective thing. If I decide it's my meal, it's my meal. Okay, you could take a Sephardi or Ashkenazi, take a sweet challah. For Sephardi, it's cake. Why are you eating cake? And for Ashkenazi, that's bread. Okay, so it's subjective here, right? So we can make it even more subjective, and I can take the cake and decide that's baked and that's my main part of the meal, not a healthy diet. That's a different problem, not the problem of brachot.
So if it's the main part of the meal, then you say
Hamotzi.
Okay.
Only if it's baked, 5 grains, and looks like bread. Now we're in the fourth criteria of things which do not look like bread and will never, never be hamotzi. So, an example, we said if it's very, very, very thin bread, very thin bread. That brings us to a question. What about lachoch? Now, lachoch. Obviously, you're too Ashkenazi if you don't. Yeah, so maybe next time we should bring lachoch. There's a problem of bringing lachoch is that what bracha do we say on lachoch? That's why we can't bring lachoch. Yeah. So if you look at lachoch, and first in the beginning I thought until I checked recipes of it because I heard that the Temanim say mezonot on lachoch, and I always thought it's bread, it's pita, so it should be amosi, no question about it. When I heard Temanim say mezonot on it, I said, 1 second, how do we make this lachoch? What kind of bread is it? If you look at it, so why do I think it's hamotzi? And when I was a child, in the bakery on Fridays, we used to go and buy pitot, special pitot for Shabbat, or pitot irakiot, which is like a pita, just a flat and big pita. Okay, one, it doesn't open like a pitot we have. So pitot Iraqi pitot, or lachoch. So I thought, okay, there's pita Iraqi, there's pita Temanit, lachoch. It's the same kind of pita, more or less. That's what I thought. But no, lachoch is a liquidy mixture, not a dough even. You can pour it out. You can pour it. You can pour this mixture onto and you bake it on a frying pan, and because it's so liquidy, so the top will be flat, but the bottom of it, there's a lot of bubbles. So there's like a lot of holes in it. It's a very, very fluffy, maybe airy kind of bread. So here, on one hand, what's the question here? On one hand, it's not so thin like a waffle or like a pancake, like an Israeli pancake, or like because it's different, yeah. Or like blinches. Not so thin. It has actually quite a thickness to it. So it's like half. On one hand, it's not a real pita. On the other hand, it does look a bit like pita. As a child, I got mixed up and I thought it's just Yemenite pita. So there's a question here about it. So therefore, many mezonot, and quite a common minhag between the Temanim, the Yemenites, the same mezonot. Rav Yosef, I think it's Rav Yosef says that if it's thick like a finger, that looks already more like a pita. The Seonot Hamosi. Usually it's thin. Usually it's less than a centimeter. Usually. So because it's something in between, it looks a bit like bread, not completely like bread. It's like so. Many will eat it only inside the meal. So let's say hamotzi on something else. Yemenites will say on it mezonot, but if they eat a lot of it, they will say it's not lafaz, it's lachoch. I have to share with you a picture of what lachoch is. Maybe I'll see if I can share a picture very, very fast here for the Zoomers, and then I'll also show you. I'll show you a picture of it. Let's see. Okay, 1 second. So the internet here is low, so I can't take time to open the picture, but I'll share it with you. Okay, so here's the lachoch. Let's see the picture of it. I'll show you have it forward. So it's more or less looks like pita on one hand, doesn't look like pita. So because it's in between, that's why we have machloket, and that's why If we do eat a lot of it, so according to many poskim, that will be hamotzi if we eat a lot of it. And since I can see we have just a bit more time, so let's just go into a topic which I skipped and we'll go back to it. Pizza. Pizza we mentioned. Pizza will be I say hamotzi on pizza. Okay, but it's a machloket. Just one more example for bread that doesn't look like bread. Bread baked in the sun. If it's baked in the sun, unless you have a very, very special oven, which is economically and green and whatever, so it bakes in a regular way. But usually baking in the sun does not bake in a regular way. It doesn't look like bread. Okay, so that will always be mezonot. So we have here a few examples of food which will always be mezonot because they don't look like bread. Now, since we skipped, and I can see we have 3 more minutes left, let's go to a question of sufganiyot. What bracha do we say on sufganiyot? Now, let's assume, just for the discussion now, that the dough it's just a simple bread dough. No milk inside, no yogurt, no sugar. It's a simple bread dough. Okay, so we don't come to the question. Simple bread dough. Okay?
Who would eat that kind of
Who would eat
stuff?
it? Yeah. Who would eat? Okay. But I know that there is a bread, I forgot how it's called, which is bread. People from Tripoli, from Louvre, they eat that kind of bread. I forgot the name of it, which is bread, but they fry it. Okay, they fry it instead of baking it, they fry it. And here comes the question. So it starts from a regular dough. We take challah from it. We separate challah because it started from a regular dough. Okay. Before we bake it, it looks like bread. But then what happens? We did not bake it. We fried it or we cooked it. We have here an argument, machloket. Is hamotzi and challah are they similar in the halachot or no? Since we separate challah, maybe also we say hamotzi, or since it started as a regular dough, maybe we say hamotzi, or since hamotzi then goes by the product, and that wasn't baked, it was fried or it was cooked. The Shulchan Aruch says Yirei Shamayim shouldn't eat it outside of a meal. Fricassee. That's the name of the bread. Fricassee. Okay. So if we have a fricassee which is made out of regular dough, they actually add a few things to the dough. So that's why the same as a not. But if it's a regular dough, according to Shulchan Aruch, one shouldn't eat it unless it's in the middle of a meal. So sufganiyah, if it's a plain sufganiyah, according to Shulchan Aruch, eat bread and then eat a sufganiyah. The Rama is Mekel, and he says no. The bracha is mezonot. The bracha is mezonot, and you can eat it. Okay, so that's according to the Rama. Let's see if we have some gania. Unless it's plain. According to Shulchan Aruch, we say on that we should eat it inside in the middle of a meal. According to the Rama, we can say on mezonot. However, usually this kind of bread will have a lot of oil inside it. Will have sugar. Will have spices inside it, which will make the case easier, and the bracha will be mezonot. So let's just summarize the topic because we had here many different topics. Okay, so we got a bit confused here. Or many didn't get confused, but just many topics. So our main part of the shir was something that looks like bread, and we say that if it doesn't look like bread, it's so thin or it's baked in the sun, the bracha will never be hamotzi. It will always be mezonot. Something which are in between. They're spread out. They're made out of liquidy mixture. But it does have some thickness to it, and we gave an example of lachoch. So, according to many poskim, that will be also mezonot, unless I eat a lot, and that will be hamotzi. And we said sufganiyot, according to the Ashkenazim, the bracha will be mezonot. So that's for today. Next week, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll discuss kar, tafel, and